Good evening, everyone. We are reconvening in public session after an executive session under CRS 24-6-4024B. I'd like to thank everyone for their patience. I know we're running a few minutes late. I'd also like to thank our live simultaneous Spanish interpreters for joining us tonight. We are live streaming our meeting, and that link can be found on the district's website. Before we begin, please stand up and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call, please, Ms. Lang.
Miller?
Here.
Ms. Parker?
Here.
Ms. Reed?
Here.
Ms. Schooley?
Here.
Dr. Varda?
Here.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda?
I move to approve the agenda for the regular school board meeting for September 15th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, it has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda for the board meeting of September 15th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Ms. Miller?
Yes?
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Schooley?
Yes.
Dr. Varda?
Yes.
Wonderful. We begin our evening with one of the biggest privileges we have as board members, which is our honors and recognition. We're pleased to welcome several community and staff members to this evening's meeting to be recognized for their exceptional contributions to a thriving culture for students, staff, and educators across Jeffco. These honors and recognitions are part of our monthly meetings to highlight the impact being made by our community, students, and staff. We will start with Dr. Varda.
Okay, for our first celebration of the evening, the Board of Education is pleased to recognize the work accomplished by our partners at the Jeffco Action Center's School Supply Drive. Could Pam Breyer, the Action Center staff members and volunteers who are present this evening, please make your way to the front of the room. Jeffco Action Center is a nonprofit serving over 30,000 individuals and families a year across Jefferson County. Their mission is to provide an immediate and compassionate response to those in the community experiencing hardship by offering resources and services to stabilize lives and promote pathways to lasting change. The Action Center has partnered with Jeffco schools and Jeffco families throughout its history, with the first school supply distribution taking place in the fall of 1999. In recent years, the Action Center school supply distribution has become one of the largest in the region, distributing between 4,500 and 5,000 backpacks a year to Jeffco students in grades pre-K through high school. The backpacks and the school supplies that fill each backpack are acquired through a combination of donations and bulk wholesale purchases. Packing and distributing 5,000 backpacks is a labor-intensive endeavor. Each year, in addition to the time of several members of the Action Center staff, the distribution calls upon 500 volunteers who contribute over 1,000 hours of volunteer time to make this happen. Due to the space that's required to assemble the backpacks, gym facilities at schools in Jeffco are used during a 2-week period to pack and distribute backpacks. Kids are able to choose their own backpack, giving them a sense of involvement and excitement as they prepare to head back to school with confidence. Please join us in recognizing the Action Center's Executive Director, Pam Breyer, and the staff and volunteers who make this organization an incredible success. Jeffco Public Schools is grateful for this partnership and the positive impact you have on our community. Let's give a round of applause to Janet for her extraordinary effort and passion for this important work. She's setting the bar high when it comes to excellence in this specific area of curriculum. Wait, I'm so sorry. I got. I am so sorry. That's what my speech said. Yay, Action Center!
We'll now turn it over to Director Miller.
Great, thank you. I'm really excited about this because it's National History Day, which is a passion of mine. And Kelly, it's lovely to see you. We sit on History Day Colorado's board together, so this is very special. I'm pleased to recognize a student from Bear Creek High School who was awarded a 2022 selection into the exhibit showcase presented by National History Day and the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. With Janet Trujillo and her social studies teacher, Kelly Savonci. I always pronounce this wrong, Kelly, I'm sorry. Please come to the front of the boardroom. Come on up. Yay! So a little bit about Janet. Janet is a junior at Bear Creek High School and a third-year National History Day student. That is awesome. National History Day is a year-long academic program focused on historical research, interpretation, and creative expression for 6th to 12th grade students. By participating in National History Day, students become writers, filmmakers, web designers, playwrights, and artists as they create unique contemporary expressions of history. The experience culminates in a series of contests at the local and affiliate levels and an annual national competition in the nation's capital in June. Janet exemplifies Jeffco's vision for student learning and academic success. Bless you. Harnessing the opportunities given to her through authentic learning experiences, historical inquiry, and a positive classroom environment where student voice is elevated above the confines of traditional learning models. And Kelly is amazing. Janet's work showcases her exemplary ability to narrate the Blood Diamonds conflict in Sierra Leone, confronting an issue that goes beyond economics into ethical and political conflicts that impacted nations globally. Kelly shares the following about Janet. We are truly proud of her as a Bear Creek Bear and congratulate her for showcasing her exhibit with the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. Janet's success and her National History Day accomplishments will help her envision her future beyond Jeffco and seize future opportunities for post-secondary success. Congratulations. It's just awesome.
No, can we just do this one? Can I have both parents? Let's see what it is. Oh, you try so hard to not go. Congratulations. And now we're going to turn it over to Director Parker.
For the final celebration of the evening, the Board of Education is pleased to recognize honoree Marla Robertson. Marla is a bus driver for the Jeffco Public Schools West Terminal. Please come to the front of the boardroom. Marla has worked for Jeffco for 18 years within the transportation department, as well as assisting with painting jobs every summer. Marla is a hard worker in all aspects of her life. She's always willing to jump in. Everyone enjoys working with her and appreciates the joy she brings to work each day. Marla's a loyal member who puts her kids first. Marla's selflessness was demonstrated on the first day of this school year. The day before school started, Marla had taken her dog on a walk and returned home to see that her house was on fire. Luckily, the pipes broke and put out the fire, but her belongings had been destroyed. Although she couldn't stay in her home, she still woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning in order to ensure that all of her students made it to school safely and on time. Word spread throughout the community of Marla's selfless act during a time of crisis, and a GoFundMe was established on her behalf. Care packages were also received, which is proof that she is part of the community she works within. Please join us in congratulating this selfless, hard-working employee who continually thinks of others before herself. Marla's supervisor states that everyone should have a Marla in their life. We agree. The district is so proud of your determination, pride, and commitment to your work, and are so proud that you are part of the Jeffco team.
Thank you for that inspiration, all of you, our students, our staff, our faculty, all of the folks that make Jeffco so awesome. It's inspirational. So moving on, we're going to go to public comment. This is an opportunity, got really bright behind me, for the community to share their thoughts with the board. The board will listen to concerns on any topic for up to 1 hour. If more time is required, we will have a second public comment at the end of the meeting. We listen with respect and ask those who address the board to do the same. In order to respect all persons addressing the board, we request that issues rather than personalities be addressed. There is a 3-minute time limit per individual speaker. If there are 4 or more people who sign up to address the board, they will have 10 minutes for that group to be able to present. With that, we will begin with our first speaker, Alana Ritchie. Welcome, Alana. You may begin whenever you're ready.
Get my tissues. I'm ready to go. Thank you for your time. Can everybody hear me?
All right, one moment. I think your microphone's not on. We want to make sure we can hear you.
Thank you for your time and allowing me to address you all, and for really listening to all of us today. I'm Alana Ritchie, and I'm a mother of 2 Jeffco students. My son attends Everett Middle School, and my daughter's a first grader at Wilmore Davis. My biggest concern about the proposed school closures relates to the programs that serve our most vulnerable students, students with disabilities and special needs. 14 of the 16 proposed closing schools serve a higher percentage of students with special needs than the district percentage of 11%. Wilmore Davis is at 26%. 10 of the 16 closing schools have center programs, and this is approximately 200 students directly affected in center programs alone. My son was part of the Autism Spectrum Disorder Center program at Wilmore Davis from kindergarten through 5th grade. Wilmore Davis is our neighborhood school, and this small school made him feel comfortable, safe, provided more connection to the staff, many of which were at Wilmore Davis for years. Wilmore Davis, like many other small schools, preaches the main message of kindness and inclusivity, and my son was fully embraced during his time there by all the students and staff. He knew who everyone was, and they in turn really knew him. My son, like many students with disabilities, can have trouble focusing, have trouble transitioning from one activity to another, have difficulty with certain external stimuli, resulting in extra time to calm down. This is on a normal day. The pandemic has been really tough on all of our students and all of our children, but it was brutal for my son and those most vulnerable kids. He struggled with online learning, changes in schedules, changes in staffing, changes in rules, all which were totally dysregulating for him and others in his class. I can remember him coming home from school during the height of the pandemic and collapsing in his bedroom, falling asleep to the San Diego Zoo stream of penguins swimming. This was not normal, and it was not COVID. He was exhausted from having to hold it together all day. Excuse me. I need to take a drink. We all know that structure, continuity, and support from people our children trust is essential to their growth and education. This is especially and emphatically true for students with disabilities, and it takes years for them to build that trust. The larger consolidation schools don't have the center programs or the resources these kids need. The support system for these children already exists in the smaller schools that already serve them. The whole pandemic experience, I fear, has been traumatizing and psychologically damaging for these children as it is, and we're still unsure of what the future holds. The pandemic is not over. These voices cannot speak for themselves, and it's our responsibility as a community and as parents to ensure that these children and families do not continue to be marginalized. Excuse me, almost done. I implore the school board to reconsider this decision. This is not just one school or one center program you're proposing to close. 14 schools serving specialized needs to hundreds of vulnerable students that have the world turned upside down by this. I plead with you to listen to the parents, the community members, and to be open to alternative ideas and options to all the Jeffco students affected, solutions that won't be so damaging to so many children and their families. I implore you to vote no on all 16 closures and come back to the drawing table with us. Individuals with disabilities are the last frontier of the battle of inequity in our communities, and their needs and voices need to be a priority. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Ritchie. Our next speaker is Destiny Farr. Welcome, Ms. Farr.
Hi, my name is Destiny. I'm also a parent of 3 students at Wilmore Davis, one of which is in the ASD program at Wilmore Davis. So I second everything Alana had to say about our special needs students and the impact on them. But I'm not here so much to talk about the specific problems with the recommendation, because it would take way more than 3 minutes to address all the issues that we have with this recommendation. More so, I'm here representing a larger and well-organized coalition of Wheat Ridge parents, community members, and other concerned parties. Just to let the board know that we recognize that something needs to be done. We recognize enrollment and budgeting and financial issues in our district, but we strongly feel that closing 16 schools next year without any input from our community is a travesty and a mistake. We're the largest stakeholders in this decision, and we have not been asked what our ideas and our plans could be. We feel that the data used to make these recommendations certainly does not show the whole picture. We are currently collecting data right now. We feel that the criteria used to determine which schools would close also does not show the whole picture and does not take into account all the ways that this will impact our communities. And we feel that many important things were overlooked in that criteria for the sake of using low enrollment, building utilization, and financial issues to make decisions, which essentially puts the financial woes of the district and our budget on the backs of parents, staff, students, and the community, and especially on already marginalized communities, low income, special needs, and families of color. We plan to come to the table with data, research, and statistics to support our position. We all have emotional stories that we could share with you, but we also have real information to back up what we intend to bring to you. We also intend to present alternative recommendations and plans, and I'm here to urge you all to reserve your judgments and your decisions and your vote decision until you hear from us, the people that you serve. We really hope that you will come and listen to us and engage with us at these public hearings. We want to work with you. We know that our children that we love and that we're here fighting for will do better if we can work together with you. If you work with our community, our children are better off. If we are butting heads about the choices that are made in this district, that's not good for our children, and we know that. So while we are passionate and we are fired up, and a lot of our comments are coming out from that place, we do want to work with you, and we do recognize that changes need to be made. We're not asking you to do nothing. We're asking you to listen to us and know that your county is made up of lots of smart people with lots of talent and lots of ideas about how to address this issue. So that's what we're urging you to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carr. Our next speaker is a group with Molly Crampton. Welcome, Ms. Crampton.
Good afternoon or good evening.
Good evening, yeah. If you wouldn't mind just being introducing the members of your group, just so we have your name, and then you guys can get started whenever you're ready.
Absolutely. We are from Vivian Elementary. My name is Molly Crampton. Anita Lewis is handing you some data that we have. This is Ophelia McKenzie and Sarah Smith, another mother at Vivian and a community member who's here to support us as well. Good evening, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to address the board. My name is Molly Crampton. I'm the mother of 2 wonderful children at Vivian Elementary, and I'm also the PTA treasurer. First, I want you to know that I understand that our children are not getting the resources that they need, and that consolidating schools is the easiest solution. I also recognize that the board chose criteria that they thought would make for fair and equitable unions. We believe that in the case of Vivian joining Stober, the criteria failed to be equitable. 5 years ago, Stober was slated to close and join Vivian because the campus had better facilities. Many Stober families railed against this with arguments that were racist, classist, and ableist. People may argue with those criteria, but at least they were neutral. The criteria used for this process benefit schools that do better in our choice system, and the choice system benefits parents with privilege who can afford the time and transportation required to get their kids to a different school. We want to be a part of a community that can appreciate every member, regardless of their socioeconomic background, living arrangement, or disabilities. We also fear that placing the burden on lower income families to change schools will further systemic inequities. Equitable integration should place the burden on families with the most privilege. 3 years ago, when our amazing principal, Michael Zweifel, championed changing Vivian's curriculum to the Classical Academy style, Jason Glass, the former superintendent, promised us 5 years and helped to write a plan to grow our school. At the time, no one could have predicted that the pandemic would throw a huge wrench in those plans, and the last 3 have been spent just trying to recover. Vivian has continued to show academic growth. In 2014 and 15, we were on primary improvement, moved to improvement in 2016 and 17, and by 2017 and 18, we're at performance. Every year since, we've exceeded growth, despite the struggles of the pandemic, and despite other schools in the district sliding during the pandemic years. The Classical Academy places emphasis on a comprehensive liberal arts curriculum anchored to the great books, virtue in all things, and roots in grammar, logic, and rhetoric. This model, combined with our core virtues, inclusion, integrity, honesty, perseverance, respect, and responsibility, build character while developing academic potential through high structure and discipline. Vivian is the only public school in the district with this model. And when 59% of the student population are children of color and 68% are receiving free and reduced lunch, and based on the numbers I've just given you, Vivian is doing what no other school in the district is doing and closing achievement gaps. It feels like this amazing opportunity is being taken away from some of the most vulnerable children in the district. Perhaps the district is concerned that if Stober was merged into Vivian, that families wouldn't come. It may be worth exploring how many parents in the Stober boundaries choice out of their neighborhood school in favor of sending their kids to Golden Classical Academy. They have a wait list and a lottery system, so clearly it's a desirable curriculum. I would think that the students of Stober and their families would be excited at the opportunities that a Classical Academy education could give them as well. Because of the focus on our core virtues, Vivian students would be fully prepared to welcome new students with open minds and open arms. Vivian's building is also better prepared to welcome a large influx of students. Stober sits on one of the smallest sites in the district and is currently rated poor on the Jeffco facility facts page and has an improvement list more than twice as long with more expensive improvements than Vivian, including projects for ADA compliance that Vivian already meets. Does it really make sense to spend more money on an older building with a smaller campus and no ADA compliance? Additionally, using Vivian's building might allow you to protect our deaf and hard of hearing program, which is one of the only in the metro area where students are mainstreamed into the classroom. Those students will lose that experience, and we will lose valuable members of our community if they move to Maple Grove. In that short time that Vivian has been a classical academy, we have been able to prove that this education model works. This curriculum is benefiting all students, and the growth shows that we have a chance to close achievement gaps, something that the entire state, the entire country is working for. It makes no sense to close down a school that is closing equity gaps, and taking away this learning model and the opportunities that it presents our most at-risk students is, at its very core, a violation of their civil rights.
My name is Ophelia McKenzie. I reside in Lakewood, and I am a Vivian parent by way of choice. I chose this school because it was a classical academy module 5 minutes from my house, but more importantly, because it was an opportunity that is not always awarded to all children in all communities. Charter schools are, for the most part, fee-based and are in communities or areas that are more affluent. I could appreciate what this opportunity meant for my child, who is a beautiful child of color. And the reason I know this because I'm South African and grew up during apartheid. I was one of the first groups of children that were allowed or permitted to go to all white schools. We were integrated after the struggle, and I was just dumbfounded by the facilities, the buildings with the pools, the resources available to these children, the programs, the books, etc. It was overwhelming for us as a small group in a vast school with children that did not look like us. We were a handful of children, but what overshadowed all of that was the treatment that we received, not only from the students, but from the teachers. I understand educational marginalism. I have personal experience with that. But for those who do not know what it is, I will give you the definition, and I quote, "It is the unfair, favored, or biased distribution of access to learning, in particular quality learning facilities and resources based in geography, gender, socioeconomic conditions, or personal circumstances," end quote. As parents, we want the best for our children. I wanted my child to go to a school where there were children that looked like her. And as we know, Jeffco schools, the percentage of schools that are the majority white, 98%, 97%, etc. I say all that to say this. Although I know that the decision that you may have to make is hard and necessary, the way in which it was done does not align with your mission statement that you have posted up on your site. You did not include family. There was no family engagement. There was no positive collaboration. There was no communication with families, school leaders, staff, members of the community. And then you also refer to us when we all work together. We are #better together, but we were not included in your together. There's a lot of speak of equity and things being equitable. But I would like to just emphasize, and this is what equity means, right? It is an adjective. Something that is equitable is fair and reasonable in a way that it gives equal treatment to everyone.
Good evening, distinguished board. My name is Sarah Smith, and I'm a Jefferson County resident living in Lakewood. I'm a registered nurse. I work with underserved populations, and I live in the Vivian school closure area. Upon learning of the 16 elementary schools planned for closure, and being familiar with some of these schools, I was curious regarding socioeconomic impact. I attended the meeting at Vivian. I was presented with criteria data, including enrollment numbers, building capacity utilization, geographical distance from closing schools to receiving schools. Notably absent was both a financial statement, a summary statement communicating the why. How were these funds going to be cut? What was going to be saved? And the socioeconomic data was also absent. These students and families are people, and I left with my curiosity unsatisfied. Next, my curiosity drove me to enlist the volunteer services of a local actuary. And I'm here tonight to share with you the results of his actuarial analysis using Jeffco enrollment data sourced from the CDE state website. Page 1 analyzes the impact on Jeffco white and non-white families. A summary finding, non-white students are twice as likely to be in a closing school than white students. Page 2 analyzes the impact on Jeffco Hispanic families. Summary finding, Hispanic students are twice as likely to be in a closing school than non-Hispanic students. Page 3 analyzes the impact on Jeffco English language learner students whose first language is not English. Summary finding, English language learners are 2.3 times more likely to be in a closing school than non-ELL students. Page 4 analyzes the impact on Jeffco low-income families based on free and reduced lunch qualification data. Summary findings, number 1, free and reduced lunch students are almost 3 times more likely to be in a closing school than non-free and reduced lunch students. Number 2, closing schools have more than double the proportion of free and reduced lunch students at 52% in closing schools and 25% in non-closing schools. These are disturbing findings to me as a community member. The 16 elementary school closure proposal seems a premature and reactionary decision on the part of our district. When analyzing a business in crisis, one doesn't only go to the production line to audit and review. One doesn't only go, to sales or distribution. The whole business, every part of the system and process and business is audited and reviewed. You speak to your frontline workers. You've got principals, educators that can show you where you have duplication and waste and be a voice in making these decisions. You have community members that can help make these decisions. Don't make hasty decisions where the youngest students and also some of our most vulnerable students will bear the brunt of your decision. As a Jeffco Board of Education member, you are our check and balance of our Jeffco School District. You serve not only the district, you have a responsibility to serve all students. You also have a responsibility to serve Jeffco parents, Jeffco citizens, and taxpayers at large. You also have a responsibility to know the values of the community that you serve. Jeffco residents do value education and their educators. They value community. They value fiscal responsibility, and they value their neighborhood schools. And distinguished board, I am asking for a no vote in November while more of this is analyzed and reviewed. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. John DeStefano. Mr. DeStefano. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Jeffco School Board members. My name is John DeStefano. I'm the Executive Director of JCAA, and I want to speak to you tonight as a former Jeffco School Board member and as someone who has been in your seat and knows how hard these decisions are. But more importantly, I want to speak to you as a parent and grandparent of Jeffco students. During my time on the board, Jeffco Schools population reached its peak in 2001 and began to gradually decline. Declining birth rates, shifting demographics in our communities have brought us to a place where we have enough seats for 96,000 children, but only serve 69,000. The other very significant factor that has changed is how we educate children in our schools today. It is very different. Our children have different needs, and we have learned there is much more children need, such as tiered social emotional learning education and other special programs, not to mention behavioral and academic needs. Today, we are capable of providing instructional coaches, aides, paras, and other supports and programs, which are not only desirable, but necessary. The sad reality is that this quality education is available in some Jeffco schools, but not in others. It is the stuff all our children deserve, and it will make a huge difference in their lives. Superintendent Dorland and our Jeffco Schools leadership team recommended to the Jeffco Board of Education a school consolidation plan that will make a difference. This well thought out consolidation plan is much more than a list of schools which are being closed. It is a plan enabling communities to stay relatively close and students to remain in the same articulation areas. At the same time, it will greatly strengthen many community schools and allow students to have the quality programs they deserve and they need. The plan has also been designed to support staff who are impacted, as well as students and families. Superintendent Dorland said in her message to our community that we are all in this together. Indeed, we are. A meaningful school consolidation plan is long overdue in Jeffco. As board members, we always want our district to be first class. That means giving all our children, what they need and being able to attract and retain quality staff. We believe the recommended plan will strengthen our entire district. It is a commitment to give all our children what they need. The price of greatness is the willingness to accept responsibility. Good luck in your deliberations on this, board members, and Godspeed.
Thank you, Mr. DeStefano. Our next speaker is Mr. Oz Campbell. Welcome, Mr. Campbell. You can start whenever you're ready.
Hello, school board members. I am a student of a larger school, and I've been a former student of one of the schools that is expected for closing. I implore you to decide not based on dollars and cents, but based on the impact that this will have upon the Jeffco communities. As I have been in a smaller school that is recommended for closing, I know its impact, and it has helped me because being in a smaller school has allowed me to have more individual attention paid to my needs, and it has allowed me to be more deliberate with my decisions when I was making life-changing choices. Being in a smaller school means that the student community is more close. It is not as toxic as the larger community that I have found in my larger school. Being in a small school has also allowed me to develop close relations with my teachers, some of which I maintain contact with even today. So, using this information and the opinions of multiple different parents and board members, I would like you to reconsider your decision to close the 16 schools, all of which are small schools and will impact the Jeffco community.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Oh, sorry, were you done?
Yeah.
Do you have more? Okay, thank you, Mr. Campbell. Thank you very much. And our next speaker is Ms. Becky Campbell. Welcome. And I was going to say, and congratulations.
Thank you for allowing us to speak. Especially, I want to say thank you to Dr. Varda for helping me get this set up with him. It has been spoken about before, but we all have a voice. And the children are a very strong part of that voice. And I know very tough decisions need to be made. I understand what you are working with. I understand numbers. But our children are not cogs in a machine. I live in the WIT STEM articulation area, and it is my home school. But when I say I choose that school every year, it's because I come from a place of privilege. I come from a place of economic stability. I am a stay-at-home mom because I can't afford to be. So I can drive my kids wherever I want. I can choice into Boulder. I can choice into Broomfield. And it has become tempting. But at the heart, I firmly believe in public education. I firmly believe that knowing who your teacher is sets you up for success for the rest of your life. I went to small schools. I believe it's why I was able to be the first one in my family to go to college. Certainly the only person in my family to go to graduate school, to complete my master's in chemistry, to be the parent that I am today. I am able to volunteer at our school. Oh, and WIT STEM is special. And you'll hear this from every parent of every school of these 16 schools. But it is a STEM school. And that does not mean we have a teacher that comes in for 30 minutes once a day. It does not mean they do coding, although that is part of it. It means that even without resources, they manage to find a way to bring problem solving and learning from the ground up. It allows those shy girls in the classroom to be leaders in their group. It gives those kids that are put in boxes of, oh, he's too rambunctious, he's too whatever, to find their strength and find their voice. And it'd be easy to say you could do this in a large classroom. But I have been there. I have volunteered there. And I don't see how. Because when you get bigger, you miss small signs. And yes, every teacher is amazing, and every teacher is going to find there eventually. But if just one kid from every classroom fell through the cracks, 2 classrooms per school, 6 grades per school, we are talking about 32 schools being affected here. That's a lot of kids. And those kids go on to become middle schoolers, to become high schoolers, to become community members. And it's easy to say, what are we going to do with adults these days? But it starts with elementary school. It starts with early childhood education. And so like many others, I implore you, one thing we know from STEM, from science, is there is always more than one way to get to the end. There is always more than one way to do addition, to do multiplication. And I believe that with our help as a community, we can find our way there without taking away the opportunities we are giving to these kids to become amazing, functional adults that will come back in 20 years and say, hey, Mrs. Taylor, guess what I did today? Guess what your information led me to? Guess what you put me in? Hey, Principal McDonald, I cannot believe this, but I was offered this amazing opportunity because of my education given here. I feel very, very strongly about this. And as I am on the tip, probably one of the very most North houses that there are, I want Jeffco to be strong. And I understand that Jeffco fights against other school districts in a choice environment. And I believe that WIT is part of what makes you stronger. WIT serves families from other school districts because of it. I know Vivian probably serves families from other school districts. We can get there because the people are there, the kids are there. We just have to believe. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Our last speaker of the evening is Nicole Rodella. Welcome. You can begin. Great, thank you.
My name is Nicole Rodella. My daughter, first grade, Campbell Elementary. I'm also the secretary of the PTA there. I'm still grappling with the decision, the list. The proposal is what I'm supposed to call it. A proposal driven by an either-or guideline. Either you have less than enough students, or you have less than the right amount of building use. The deck is stacked not in our favor, like a two-headed coin with no good tails. It's a package deal, a $12 million savings, an all-or-nothing vote. How can the Board of Education say no? I don't think they can. The proposal is to close 16 schools at once in Phase 1 of Regional Opportunities for Thriving Schools. I get stuck on the words opportunities for thriving schools because our school, Campbell, is thriving. Our black and white numbers lump us into a pile of non-thriving laundry, and we feel like we've been thrown to the floor in a heap. Being told a narrative that as soon as possible we'll forget the shock, the pain, the disbelief, and keep going like nothing has happened. The district tells us to look towards a brighter future with more robust and extraordinary experiences. It also feels like the district is guilting communities and schools into feeling bad for being upset and wanting to rally. Gaslighting at its finest, covered by, through the lens of opportunity. As parents, teachers, and leaders, we must swallow our emotions, keep moving forward for the children. The children, families, teacher, and staff at Campbell are grieving. Grieving is not reserved for death alone. Grieving is the loss of the unexpected, be it love, life plans, children, pets, home loss, job loss, or school closure. Grief is our response to loss. I will continue to talk about all the good things about Campbell, the reasons it doesn't make sense to close it, and more. I will ask why our school is the only school on the list being divided into 2 receiving schools. I will ask how they plan to hire and train enough bus drivers to bus children in the closure areas. How will they help families who financially need it the most? I will ask why a school that has over 350 kids is forced to shutter instead of becoming the receiving school. I will ask why the district wants to push some receiving schools to or over capacity. I will ask teachers directly if they feel that they are being treated with fairness. I will also be proactive. I will do my part to help hold the district accountable for their promises. Jeffco is doing an injustice to our children, families, and neighborhoods by not involving communities before he requested the vote or the report. They are ripping apart networks for children who need them the most on a promise of tomorrow, but the district has had a history of not long-term planning. Something in Jeffco has got to change, or this will happen again. It is clear we will never have peace of mind in our schools until Jeffco changes its approach to the enrollment issues. Declining birth rates are not a new phenomenon. In a world of choice, why is the district not engaging in direct marketing with neighborhoods with schools? Charters do it. The problem of enrollment will not go away by closing 16 schools, and who knows how many more in Phase 2. Until Jeffco identifies the why behind the decisions, they will never know how to better serve the choice out population. Meanwhile, they will continue to lose more students and staff due to mistrust. This conversation has been at the heart of so many conversations since July that sometimes I shut down, sometimes I cry, sometimes I storm around the house. It takes a lot of energy to be mad for this long. I'm tired, other families are tired, teachers and principals are over it. I fear the participation that Jeffco seeks for a better tomorrow is jaded. I do hope families use their chance to voice their grievances and hold Jeffco accountable to creating the utopian schools they want us to imagine. For me, my energy is best spent on positivity. If I must, I'll pour all of my energy into making Campbell's last year as an elementary one for every child, teacher, staff, parent, family, or friend to enjoy, to remember, and to bond over. I can visit, but I can't stay in the mad zone too long. It's time to change lanes, move forward, and keep advocating as I go. My closing question for the board and for Superintendent Dorland: if you were in my shoes, what would you, each of you, do to hold a district accountable to reach student performance benchmarks?
Thank you, Ms. Rodella. Okay, wonderful. Sorry, I just had to make sure I wasn't putting the cart before the horse. That is the end of our public comment for round 1. Thank you all very much for coming and speaking with the board. We really appreciate it. Okay, sorry. The reason this is happening is because there was a brief outage of our system for sign up. And so I'm double checking that there's not something I missed in the interim. But Ms. Dozman, did you sign up? And it didn't. Okay, please come on up. It's like old school, having to lean to my left and my right to see that there's somebody here. Welcome. You have 3 minutes. You can start whenever you'd like.
Thank you so much. My name is Leah Dozman. I live in Wheat Ridge. I am a Jeffco school, a product of Jeffco schools, and I have 2 children at Peak Expeditionary School, which was formerly known as Pennington. I attended Pennington Elementary as a child, and during the 2017 school closures, I felt that it would be detrimental to our community if the school were to be closed. I rallied with community members and spoke to many board members, and we were able to be spared. And since that time, which I want to touch on the Unified Improvement Plan, is we went from turnaround status to performance status. And in 2019, we were on one of the Colorado's most improved schools on CMAS tests. We ranked number 3. And all of the schools on this list are small schools, which are the schools that we are slated to close in our community. Wheat Ridge is growing. I serve on Wheat Ridge City Council. Because of the efforts that I went through in 2017, I wanted to support policies to attract young families into our community. We're growing, we're developing. We have businesses coming to Wheat Ridge. We have housing coming to Wheat Ridge. The Lutheran campus is coming up at Clear Creek Crossing, which includes housing. And then we're going to have a ton of housing go into the Lutheran Legacy campus as well. Wheat Ridge undertook a reimagining Futures Conference in 2017. That's actually how I met Miss Julie when Stover and Pennington were on a closure list. And we went through a rigorous 3-day-long process of what would it look like if we could create our Wheat Ridge schools. And nothing came of it, unfortunately. There was no follow through. And I'd like to implore the board to see what it is that we can reimagine these schools. And Peak Expeditionary is a perfect example of what we can do to turn a school completely around. We've doubled in enrollment. We've unfortunately lost our Title I status, but our PTA and our school accountability committee is ready and willing to work to fundraise to support these programs. And we have just grown immensely. And I would not be standing here saying that we have had a complete 180 back in 2017. I was right there with these families, completely devastated, thinking that our school was going to close and that there was no hope for us. So I implore you to give these schools the possibility that Peak received in 2017. Let them reinvent themselves, turn it around, and be the best that we can be for our students, because small schools have proven to be helpful for our school system, as we've heard this evening. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So we will be moving on to ends monitoring. And the first is a presentation about a supplemental appropriation for fiscal year 22-23, which aligns with board policies EL 5, 6, and 11. We adopted the 22-23 budget for Jeffco Public Schools on June 8th, 2022. Since that time, the district and the JCEA bargaining unit reached an agreement on compensation and related matters, and we approved that contract on August 19th, 2022. Our next agenda item is a presentation on a proposed budget amendment and appropriation related to that contract. First, we'll hear from CFO Brenna Copeland regarding the proposed resolution for a supplemental appropriation. Superintendent Dorland, is there anything you would like to add at this time before we turn it over to our colleagues?
Thank you, President Schooley. Board of Education members, you'll remember that we were able to complete successful mediation processes with our JCEA partners in early August. And then in your August board meeting, you approved the contract with JCEA. Because of the increases in salary as part of that contract and the shift to our new salary schedule, we are now bringing to you a supplemental budget consideration to support the changes within the contract. And so that is the purpose of this agenda item and the presentation this evening. We wanted you to definitely understand what the supplemental appropriation would be and be able to dialogue about that and ask questions. So thank you to Ms. Brenna Copeland. I will hand it over to you and your team. Mr. Sammons, thank you for being here, and we look forward to this update.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent Dorland, board members. Very good to see you this evening. Wonderful introduction. So I will, without further ado, will actually hand it over to Brian, who's going to walk you through your first several slides.
Hello, Brian Sammons, Budget Director. Okay, so here's one of our favorite slides that we like to show that shows our cyclical nature of our budget process. Something that you'll see here is that in September, we normally go over the preliminary amounts of the prior fiscal year. But since this year is unique with the JCA negotiations finalizing in August, we are here to now ask for an increase in appropriation to award these amounts. On June 8th, the budget adopted by the board had a total general fund expense of $813 million and $66 million in transfers for a total of $880 million. This resulted in a budget use of fund balance of $28.1 million. Since the adopted budget was approved prior to having the JCEA negotiations finalized, we had a compensation increase placeholder of $62.8 million in here. As you can see in the original presentation, it was projected in 2024 to be the first year that the unassigned reserves did below the GFOA recommended minimum. The final JCA negotiation agreement included a 1% stipend to Title I educators, higher step costs at 2.5%, and a higher max salary of $100,208. These changes resulted in a $4.4 million increase to the adopted budget compensation placeholder that we had. Here's a table that shows the increase for the JCA agreement, and for transparency purposes, the movement of budget from the placeholder account to the correct funds where the people are actually paid. The reason we grouped the placeholder compensation amount in the general fund was to better utilize Anna's plan's ability to forecast and to track the compensation in out years. I'm going to turn it back over to Brenda now for the next slides. You say anything on?
I might go back, yeah. So I want to point out what you're seeing as some negatives. That does not mean that we are in any way taking back anything or adjusting those estimates. We're just moving the funds out of the general fund and into the other funds so that employees paid out of our transportation fund or our IT fund or our food and nutrition services fund, so that those budgets will have sufficient funding to award the increases that were agreed. And so that's what those negatives, which exactly offset with the positive increase to the total transfers. So again, we're just moving the money. In no way are we taking any of it back. Okay, so this amended budget does alter our multi-year projection, which is what this slide is really touching on. For 22-23, as Brian said, we will be increasing our total expenditures out of the general fund, including those increases to transfers. And that will produce a use of fund balance in the general fund of $32.5 million. I want to say one thing, which is these are all estimates. When we move 5,000 people to a new salary scale, there's some unknowns. And one of the unknowns is how many of our educators will be moving from the former top lane, which was lane 5, to lane 6. And so things like that, we have to just estimate. And that's what we're trying to budget for, is what do we think a reasonable estimate is. We may be off a little, but I just want to flag that these are all estimates. We might end up spending a little less. Hopefully we won't need to come back for any more. That is my hope. For 23-24, it's still the first year that our unassigned reserves would dip below our GFOA recommended minimums. Of course, the board policy stipulates a 4% reserve unrestricted in addition to the 3% TABOR. And so we would not be below the current board policy that is in policy. Yeah. On our multi-year outlook, and this is really just looking at reserves, again, in those same three categories. What are our TABOR reserves, which are statutorily mandated? What are our restrictive reserves? Those are things on an annual basis that get tagged to specific uses. Sometimes it's specific accounting, but a good chunk of that is generally our carry forward expense that we allow schools to spend the following year that they didn't spend in the current year, basically. But then that yellow line is our unassigned reserves, and you do see it dropping. You do see it dropping. So per state statute, when our budget does utilize fund balance to cover our expenditures, the resolution shall state the school district's plan to ensure that the use of beginning fund balance will not lead to an ongoing deficit. We mentioned this in June, and we had similar bullets, but slightly different, in starting to outline the parameters of a plan to ensure that deficits are not ongoing. We have a little more detail now that we're able to release in light of the recommended school consolidations. I think several folks have already mentioned we do expect to hopefully reduce some of our expenditures, our budgeted expenditures, between $8.5 and $12 million. Happy to talk more about that, but that was a detailed analysis of what we might be able to reduce in terms of our school-based costs, our costs incurred at the school sites. We also want to do a detailed review of our centrally delivered services in light of our reducing potential footprint and generate some estimates for how do we scale appropriately all aspects of the organization to reflect a potentially lower number of school sites pending the board decision. We also want to look for other adjustments, and this may not be tied to consolidation, but opportunities to reduce budgeted expenditures in our departments and potentially in our per pupil funding so that we can bridge the gap between our ongoing revenues and our projected expenditures. And lastly, there would always be an option to consider a new mill levy override ask to our voters. So those are elements of our plan. And with that, I'm happy to entertain questions.
All right, board members, what I'm going to go ahead and do is call for a motion on this. It was pulled from consent so that when we have the discussion, it will lead into the vote. So is there a motion on this agenda item? All right.
I move to adopt the supplemental 2022-23 appropriation by approving the resolutions, 1, authorizing a portion of the beginning fund balance, and 2, adopting an amended budget as reflected in board docs.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, board members, now is our opportunity for discussion. Is there any board member that would like to begin? Questions or comments? Director Miller?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you. One of the questions I had that I had sent in a little bit earlier was the resolution that we're voting on this evening talks about the draw of different fund balances from different departments. And so my calculation was it's a $40 million deficit spend, and I just appreciate if you could clarify that for me.
Sure. So your calculation is very close. The authorization to use fund balance is not presented on a net basis. It's presented only across funds where we would be using fund balance, right? And so some of our funds are actually accruing fund balance. So if you're sort of trying to get to what is the number across the board of district-wide reserves across all the funds, how much of that on a net basis that we'd be deploying, the sum total is 39.5. So you're very close, but I just wanted to point out that a few of those funds actually will be generating a positive. Now, I have excluded our capital funds because that would skew everything, because intentionally, of course, we're drawing down fund balance from those building fund issuances.
And and then one more question. My understanding is that with the revised contract, we took 2 days away from student contact, right, for our elementary school students. And I just wanted to reiterate that that's what we did in that contract as well. Is that correct?
It's 3 days.
3 days.
And it's this year, while we take a look at the Healthy and Equitable Start Times initiative and consideration of teacher time, start time and end time each day, time within the day for instructional planning for teachers, and trying to create more consistent norms across schools for teacher time. And some of that will also be impacted by school consolidations, depending upon the board's decision in November, because some of that is impacted by whether or not a school has full-time art, music, and PE, or if it's part-time, how much of a person is shared across schools and which schools and travel time. So it's very complicated. So for this year, while we have, more than 100 start and end times in our district, and while we're working towards more consistency with that and waiting on the decisions around school consolidations so that hopefully in 23-24 we can have more consistency in programming around thriving programs like art, music, PE, mental health. We agreed to 3 days of non-student contact time at elementary only. I'm looking over at my friends. I think it's elementary only. And those 2 of those days are the 2 days before winter break, the Monday, Tuesday. Parents said to us that they thought those days weren't really productive, and they questioned that in our calendar. Many parents, gave us that feedback. And then there's a 3rd day in the 2nd semester, the Monday after spring break. And so those 3 days were added as non-student contact days to support our elementary teachers with planning time, because we have so many inconsistencies across the schools given the start and end times, and in many of our small schools with the lack of full-time staff to support teachers, classroom teachers, with their planning time.
Thank you for that clarification. I understand the rationale behind it. My concern, which was when we asked for more days last year, because we are struggling with learning losses and the need for students to be with teachers, it is disappointing, candidly, that we rolled back. And I understand the 2 days before winter break, and I understand, the Monday after spring break. The point being is that we've taken time away from our children who need it the most. And that is disturbing for me, for our kiddos' experience. Thank you for the clarification on the $39.5 million as opposed to $40 million. I apologize for my rounding error. I will be more succinct in the future in my inquiry. So thank you.
Other board members, questions, comments? Director Reed.
So we're looking at one possibility being going to the voters for a mill levy. Is that something that you would recommend that we would need to do like by next fall? As we look at the budget and getting this corrected, what would you recommend as the timing on that?
So I would definitely stop short of advising the board on potential ballot measures. I think that's probably not my forte. What I would recommend is the following. I mean, I think what the board should be asking staff and leadership is what amount of money. So you saw a slide with some TBDs. So I would encourage you to be directing us to fill those TBDs and with dollar figures as we approach the FY24 budget cycle, and really have a both reasonable but also significant target for what are the budgeted expenditures we need to potentially adjust so that we start bridging that gap. I think there's good work and hard work to be done before we would potentially consider asking for additional funds.
And I think I'm going to add, even though this is not necessarily a budgeting thing, simply because it's been brought up, that as an educator, I just need to say that I think it's really critical that our teachers engage in quality planning, and that we make sure that they have the time that they need to assess the things that students are doing and adjust their instruction accordingly. So I think ultimately our students will benefit from our teachers having the planning time that they need to make those things happen. And I am hoping that next year we won't have those inequities from school to school, and all of our teachers will have the time that they need.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. Director Parker.
As you mentioned, there are some TBDs in here, but as far as the mill levy override, there is an upper limit to how much we could ask for. Do you know what that number is?
So it does adjust year to year because it is basically a ratio, a percentage of our total program. My best guess, and I'm happy to double check this number after the fact, because by saying it out loud, I can guarantee it's wrong. I think we have about 46 million-ish left in this year's total program computation.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Yep, Superintendent.
I just want to jump in on the mill levy override bullet point, and it is definitely something that the board has as its discretion to decide upon in terms of a opportunity to generate revenue. And having done that work in previous communities, one of the things that's going to be very important, I believe, to that work being meaningful and supported by our community is to make sure that we're really clear on what we need that to be going towards in terms of programming and benefit to students, families, and staff. And right now, my feeling is that we are doing so many foundational pieces. Once we get those foundational pieces in place with these major initiatives around start and end times, being more consistent to support consistent instructional time for students, healthy start times for adolescents, and planning time for teachers, as well as level setting our footprint if the board is to support the recommendations for consolidations. I think we'll know more after those foundational pieces are in place about the best timing to think about a mill levy override, and we'll be able to better let the board know what we think it should be invested in. Right now, we're spread so thin that it's really difficult to know the impact, the positive impact that this will have at scale. So once we do this work, I think we'll be in a better position to have the conversation. I just want to acknowledge that right now we have many communities that are hurting, and I think we saw that tonight in the public comment. And it's really challenging to think about asking our community for additional supports when we're all going through something that is so challenging and emotional, that's brought on by school consolidation conversations. And so we'll just have to think really critically about the best timing. And I want to make sure that if we are to come to the board and recommend something like that, or you all are to consider it, that we're really clear about what we need the money for and can be very accountable to our community, that it's going to have an impact and be meaningful investment.
Are there any other? I have a couple of questions, but I don't want to. Dr. Varda?
I've been wondering about this for a little while, but I think I wonder if you have advice for us. I think the Tabor balance, I think the law allows, and some other districts allow us to not have it as a cash balance, but maybe an investment. I don't know if I'm saying this right, an investment in like an infrastructure. What's your opinion on that? Is that a smart thing to think about, or should we not?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would strongly recommend that we consider replacing the cash we hold in Tabor with potentially some of our properties. That said, it's more useful in a situation where a district might be cash constrained. At the moment, we're not cash constrained. What we have is a multi-year where we might become that. So I think the right horizon to consider that is probably in the next 6 to 12 months as a way to avoid having to borrow funds, although we do have access to an interest-free loan program from the state as well, should we need it.
Thank you. I've wondered that for some time. I'm also just curious. I know that the legislature just did a lot of work. There's work ongoing. Do you have any updates, or are you thinking about some of the changes to any of the budget legislation that has passed or upcoming that is influencing your thinking right now on this?
Nothing definitive. I will say I have been closely following and, in fact, attending in person the Interim Committee on School Finance meetings. There are some ideas that have been batted around in that context that could be somewhat hurtful to Jeffco. And so it's felt important to be present and really understand what's happening. But yeah, right now there's nothing definitive on that front that I'm worried about.
Thank you both. I have a comment and a question. My comment is I'm worried about the position we're in. When you were saying you can see on the slide that it's dropped and then you paused, in my head I said precipitously is the word we're looking for, or I was looking for. So I'm worried. So that's the statement. My question is, as we move forward and sort of statutorily create this plan to not have ongoing deficit spending happening, I'm wondering about the role of our Financial Oversight Committee in providing recommendations as we look at some of the TBD areas or areas that have not been explored or because it's going to be, I think, a multi-pronged approach that's going to be required because it's not an insignificant drop. So if you could speak to the role that they currently play and if moving forward, that could be an area where they could provide recommendations to the board for possibilities as we grapple with how to fill in the blank, not drop precipitously year over year. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I do think the Financial Oversight Committee has been engaging on this question and is eager to meet with you tentatively, and agendas are always tentative. They're scheduled to formally come before you November 2nd, and that date has a little bit to do with timing around when financial data is ready. But for the last several months of last fiscal year and for the first meeting of this year, the Financial Oversight Committee has been doing deeper dives into aspects of the district's expenditures, our revenue, our enrollment, state funds, et cetera, I think in a way that's been slightly different for them with an eye towards the multi-year. And so I do know that they also are very interested in engaging and trying to be thought partners with the board on how to solve or come up with some options for solving that precipitous drop of our reserves. So yes, November 2nd, tentatively, is when but they could come sooner if you would prefer, of course.
I have an interest in them doing that work and us having that information. I think that it's going to be an important group that we have tasked with thinking about some of these issues. I will open that up for other board members since I feel like if we're to ask them to move forward with doing that work, it would be great to know if there's sort of a board will to have them do that. So I open that up for other board members just to share their perspective and if that sounds like something that we'd like to have that group move forward with as a committee. Director Barta?
Sorry, how is it different from what they're tasked to do now?
So it's providing a sort of specific set of recommendations that's focused around the correction of how we're using our reserves in a deficit spend. Yeah. Director Miller?
I think a couple things. We've been down this road over the past decade, and we have these panics of, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be panicked because this is different and is precipitously moving in the wrong direction. I think that because of the work that has to be done. And it's not, I think, on our plates. We don't know where changes in the budget process should be. That's kind of us asking you, Superintendent Dorland, to do that work with your team and with the financial oversight as providing guidance. My fear is, as we've done in the past, we said we have to cut $60 million, and we're not having to cut $60 million, but let's just say we have to cut X millions of dollars, and we start cutting things that are harmful to children. We start after athletics, or we go after things that people get very angsty about, because we will then come back and say, well, now you need to give us more money, which goes back to, I think, your point earlier of what would we be using that mill levy for and why. So it would have to be, in my world, for children, for the benefit of kids in some way. But I also think it's really important that we really look at the whole budget and not just say across the board we cut 10%, because then to me we're cutting into the marrow potentially in some areas that we can't cut into the marrow anymore. And so I would hope that we would have that vision with the FOC and the guidance of you, Superintendent Dorland, of how do we really look at the $800 million or $900 million that we get from the state, along with our grant dollars, the 1.02 or 3 or $4 billion that we have. How do we start to right size and invest in the activities that we know we need to be investing in? Because we're talking about closing schools, and you and I've had this conversation as well. And yet we're going to be giving resources to these schools that we're closing to be able to provide great learning experiences for kids. And that costs money that we really may not have. And so I think we have to have that activity-based cost analysis work as a part of what we, with the FOC and with your team, Brenna, and with the direction by you, Superintendent Dorland, because I wouldn't know where to look to change budgets. That's kind of what I would ask of you all. So yes, I would be interested in that work. Thanks.
To react to Ms. Miller's comments, I think what you're talking about is a structural fix to the deficit versus like target practice and across the board, everybody has to cut X percent, which doesn't strategically move us in a direction of aligning our overall budget to our strategic plan. And that's really what we need to do. We need to think about where are we with Jeffco Thrives? And this is where we have these 4 major initiatives with start times and regional opportunities and data dashboard and positive climate and culture. And those things are all very, very difficult to do all at the same time. But of course, it's a more multi-year plan. We have started work with the FOC and helping them understand Jeffco Thrives. We will be doing work with the FOC to help them understand the regional opportunities work, which is one of the major initiatives. And then I think they do need to have this conversation around helping us align our resources to our means and also to our strategies and the work that we want to accomplish from the strategic plan. So I'd be happy to, we're working on that now and happy to do so.
And sorry, I just wanted to add, the FOC actually addresses the board typically on average about 3 times. So while November 2nd is the first or the most immediate, I think it is more of a dialogue with multiple opportunities for you to speak with them and have that help shape your thinking as we're thinking about adopting the FY24 budget next year. So just wanted to clarify.
And it may be beneficial if the board is interested for them to come to, say, a study session in October, just to begin that work, because it is big work. But I don't know if that's something the board might be interested in.
I think that would be strategic also because as we talk about, there have been tactics that have been undertaken in the past in terms of addressing various levels of deficit for the district that this board may or may not want to see happen again. And we've heard for 1 or 2. So I think it would be helpful to to meet with them in October to be able to share some of those values and some of the sort of thinking that the board is doing and help inform the strategy that they then have moving forward to provide recommendations, to me would be wise. And we can include that in agenda planning for October. Board members, are there any other discussion items before I repeat the motion that's on the table? Okay. Oh, nope. Director
Sorry
Parker.
about that. I just want to make a comment that at this point, we have contracts, we have commitments, and this is reflecting those. So I believe that the appropriate thing to do is to vote for this change and these transfers. Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion items? Okay. Hearing none, it has been moved and seconded. I forgot what we did. Moved and seconded to adopt the supplemental 22-23 appropriation by approving resolutions. Number 1, authorizing a portion of the beginning fund balance, and number 2, adopting an amended budget as reflected in board docs. Roll call, please. Ms. Lang.
No.
Ms. Parker? Yes. Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Schooley?
Yes.
Dr. Varda?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Thank you both for your work. We'll be talking with you again, I'm sure. We're going to move on board to item number 7, which is the consent agenda. Items 7.01 through 7.21 are presented in board docs as a proposed consent agenda. However, I'd like to note that in connection with agenda item 6.01, we've already voted on the resolutions that are listed as consent agenda item 7.15. So item 7.15 is removed from the consent agenda. Do I have any requests to remove any other items from the consent agenda before we create a motion? No? All right. Do I have a motion regarding the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as posted in board docs.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Roll call, please. Ms. Lang.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Parker? Yes. Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Schooley?
Yes.
Dr. Varda?
Yes.
Right. Thank you. All right. Moving on, we have a discussion and possible action on what is Proposition FF, which is being reviewed right now as legislation called Healthy School Meals for All Public School Students. This November, voters will consider Proposition FF, which proposes amending the Colorado statutes to create the Healthy School Meals for All program. The program is designed to provide access to free meals for all public school students in Colorado and pay for the program by increasing taxes paid by households with incomes of $300,000 or more, and by using additional federal funding for school meals. For discussion and possible vote is a request that we as a board and as a district take a support position on the proposition. Do I have a motion on this agenda item before we move to discussion?
I move that the Board of Jeffco Public Schools support the passage of Proposition FF.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to support the passage of Proposition FF, and now we have an opportunity for discussion. So board members, we all received some information from our lobbyist, Mr. Ed Bowditch, and I will open up the floor for conversation from board members, questions, and comments about this possible support of Proposition FF. Is there anyone that would like to begin? And/or Superintendent Derwin, do you have anything you'd like to add about this proposition?
I'm grateful to the board for considering this. I think it's an opportunity for our students in the Healthy Meals arena. I'm grateful to our JESPA partners for their support of this initiative and their grassroots efforts. I do believe it is a big, huge impact and benefit to our students if it does pass. I also believe it is, and acknowledge it's a new tax, and I understand that that will be up to the voters. But I believe that with our amazing Food Nutrition Services team, Ms. Wallace is here with us this evening in support of this as well, that we can provide healthy school meals for students with this initiative. We have seen, now that the federal government is no longer subsidizing free meals for all students, we have seen a decline in the number of students we are feeding on a daily basis. And so we're fortunate that we didn't have to raise meal prices this year. We kept them at pre-pandemic levels. We're probably using some deficit to support that this year. So if this were to pass, it would really help us be able to serve more students healthier and more nutritious meals. That would be my perspective as the board considers this issue.
Questions and comments, board members, from the information that we were provided by Mr. Bowditch or other information that is out there? Director Parker.
I'm just wondering, did Mr. Bowditch give us a document that we were sent? Because I don't see it. I see the discussion of this item, but I don't see any document.
As an attachment in board docs, you mean?
Yeah.
I don't believe so. He did send an email, and there's a link. I'm just repeating what Superintendent Dorland's saying next to me. I'm not. Okay. In which, I'm just installing now, in which he provided an overview of the proposition, who all groups that are in support of it, there were no groups that were not in support of it, and some of the fiscal implications.
So it's the link.
Yeah, so do you see the pertinent facts?
Yes.
The 7 pertinent facts in board docs are what Mr. Bowditch sent to us. And then there is a link to the policy or the organization's website. And that was additional information for the board to consider.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Director Miller?
So I have a couple questions about it. The price tag of $100 million is a significant amount of money. And yes, it costs money to provide healthy meals for our children. I do know we had a number of, maybe it was a year and a half, maybe 2020 early, a number of parents coming and talking to us about the quality of the food, and that a lot of people were passing on the food because of it was not what students were seeking. And we also, I think, had community come from Jefferson area that wanted meals that were culturally aligned with their students. And, I'm assuming that this is something that we could probably potentially use for that purpose to honor different communities. My hard connection with this is feeding everybody when people can't afford to be fed. And so are we taking some of the money that could be given into our schools for programming and for other opportunities from an equity side of resources? And so, we're paying for things that I'm not sure why we would have to pay for that, as opposed to really paying for meals that are really serving those students of greatest need. So that's my kind of unease about saying, yes, let's do this, because it's not going to just be $100 million. It will continue to escalate over time. It'll become a bigger piece. And, does that take away from the funding that goes to schools for other purposes, because the state's going to be putting this money into that purpose? So that's my conflict on this. Because you want great food for children, of course. But I'm just wondering if we're taking money from over here that could be benefiting a wider range of students for their academic experiences and giving it to people that can feed themselves. Sure, that'd be great.
I did ask this question of Mr. Bowditch if this initiative would impact state decision-making on the funding of K-12 with the existing state funds for K-12 and sort of like the buy down of the budget stabilization factor, that kind of thing. Because it's a new tax, it won't necessarily directly impact the state funding for K-12 for what we do, what our priority and our mission is. That being said, it is a large amount of money for K-12 in the nutrition services space. And so the impact of it in future conversations at the state level around K-12 funding is unknown. But the direct funding of it is a new tax. And so it would not impact the funding from the general fund from the state that comes to us at this time.
Right, and I understand that. My concern is that people will start to say, well, we're putting another $100 million into K-12, and so therefore that budget gets bigger, but in reality, it's, like you said, for the food, which is great, but then do we start to sacrifice that money that's really supposed to be for K-12? Does that make sense? You know what I mean by that? I mean, because we only have so much money that's allocated accordingly.
So one question I would have, and I'm not sure who would be able to answer this, but particularly during the few years when all students had access to free lunches, do we have an idea of the percentage of students that were not FRL qualified that took advantage of our school lunches?
So I'm going to invite Ms. Wallace to come up to the table and join our conversation if that's okay with the board.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Wallace. I'm just going to start dragging people out of the audience to answer questions now. Welcome.
Thank you. That's a very good question, and one that I'm very proud to report that we saw a 30% increase in participation year over year of students that took advantage of meals at no cost. And we really believe these are families that are kind of just on the bubble of needing that assistance that do not typically qualify for those meals. And as anticipated, the minute there was not that funding for those meals, we see our participation dropping right back, really equal to where we were in school year 2019-20.
So in your estimation, then, the primary, I mean, all children are worthy of having free and nutritious meals to make sure we all know how that contributes to educational success. In your estimation, though, would you say that in general, that the meals are still being provided to students who may have some level of need around being able to participate and afford school lunches?
Are you asking, like, this year are our kids back that qualify for free and reduced? Is that what you're asking me?
I think what I'm trying to get at, and I was asking it in a really strange way. My apologies, Ms. Wallace.
No worries.
I think the question I'm trying to get at is, I have a feeling, a suspicion, having two children that have and have not at different times in their educational careers availed themselves of school lunches. One, I don't want any child to feel stigmatized by having school lunch when other children know that there are some conditions put around that. I want that to be something that's available to every child that attends any Jeffco school, and I think it's really important. I also am interested, as Ms. Miller mentioned, in being able to hopefully leverage some of this to be able to think about culturally appropriate food or alternatives and innovations in how we serve foods that are truly nutritious and healthy and to our kids. And so really all I'm getting at is trying to figure out if the concern is that students that are from families who don't qualify for free and reduced lunch, if the concern is that they may be availing themselves of a resource that they don't need, I'm trying to sort of get at what that estimated number is, because I agree with you. I think there are a lot of bubble families where they may not qualify for free and reduced lunch, but it's certainly extraordinarily helpful to families regardless. So
absolutely.
That was more of a soapbox than a question. My apologies.
No, I agree 100%. You know, through my career, you know, I have heard families say, well, we can only afford to buy school lunch twice a week, you know, and so we bring our meals from home on the other days. So that is those families that really want that nutritious meal and want their kids to be there to receive it, but really cannot afford the paid meal.
Thank you. That did answer my very long-winded question of you. Superintendent
Ms. Wallace, can you also address something that was brought up by I think it was Ms. Miller, around the culturally relevant menus? and some interest from our communities that's come to the board around diversity with menu planning and food options for students that align to cultural backgrounds. Is there
Absolutely.
something that this would help with? That's the question.
Well, I do think higher participation is always important with how we are able to plan meals for our students. And diverse meals and options are always something that we want to provide. And we want to hear from our kids, really. What do you want? What are you missing? And we do a lot of surveys. But as we increase participation, we have that opportunity to enhance those meal options with our families. And I think that's a very important goal within our department is reaching what we would call that equity level there.
Okay. Thank you. It's exciting to hear about, because I know we've had a lot of conversations with families and with our JESPA partners about that. Other questions or comments, Director Parker?
Yes, I'm also concerned about the stigma that it's attached to the free and reduced lunch kiddos. And I'm also very concerned about those on the bubble. And I know that families go in and out of hard times. So I am very much in favor of this. And I also think, on a side note, from what I've seen in my visits to schools, lunch times are pretty short. They're often short. And the kids are trying to just talk with their friends, and they don't always sit down and, spend a lot of time eating. I noticed that if you have to go through the line and you have to either say, yeah, you got a card, or you don't have a card, or how much do you have left on your card, and that kind of thing, it really slows down the process and gives the kids less time for lunch. So it's another consideration.
So just to clarify, that won't change. I know everybody got comfortable with, while we were under all kinds of waivers during COVID, we were checking a box when children went through. But even with this funding, we still have to know, that's how our reimbursement claim comes in. We still have to know whether the child, and we have identity, no one knows who it is, but when they put their number in, we know whether that child is free, reduced, or paid. And so that will continue.
But do you have to check how much money they have left on their card so that, oh, I'm sorry, you can't have potato chips?
Oh no, that checking the account balance, but when they put that ID number is, that account balance pops right up on our screen. So they will have to put their ID number in because of our reporting to the state to get our reimbursements.
I still think it'll go faster.
Yeah.
Yep, Director Reed.
I think the other piece that I really like about having free and reduced lunch for all students is that it's not the kid who decides whether or not their account is getting topped off. That's the parent who does that. And I know that before this was an option, it would happen that kids' parents would forget to top off their account. And now you've got a kid who is halfway through the school day and has just been told, well, you can have, whatever this little alternative was to sort of stave off low blood sugar and fainting, but really wasn't an actual lunch, and was stigmatizing. And, just in general, kids not, and well, I don't have the money, so I'm not even going to go up there and ask. It's too embarrassing. And so I do like the idea, regardless. I mean, I do sort of feel like if you can afford it, it'd be great if you paid for it, because it makes everybody's life better and we can use those resources differently. But it's the kid that ends up paying in the most profound ways, and it really does impact their ability to learn in the afternoon. So I think there are a lot of reasons that speak to school districts supporting this particular legislation.
Other questions or comment? Yep, Director Barta.
I was just going to say, if you look at the site, the Yes on FF site, and the partners, the people who are supporters of it, I think it really demonstrates the cross-sector support for this. And I think this is way bigger than our schools getting more funding for food for kids. I think this is a real demonstration of the community that cares about food insecurity and hunger for people, and an acknowledgement how that is a social determinant of health, our education outcomes. And I think when you see the kind of coalition of people and organizations that are coming together around this, it just demonstrates, I think, that this is, feeding kids and making sure that they can not only learn well, but go home well and be healthy all around. So I would be very, very proud to have our logo put on this page.
Board member, thank you, Director Berta. Any other comments or questions for Ms. Wallace or just in general? And thank you for your surprise visit.
I would just add
Command performance.
Yes, I think this is important, back to the point of I want all kids to have access to meals. And by the way, we serve all kids. We serve kids a meal every day, whether they have money or they don't. I know in years past there's been other things, but in Jeffco we serve all kids a meal every day, and do not let anyone go without eating. But it does remove that stigma. No one anymore knows whether you're free or reduced, because there are pockets of areas where only kids that qualify for free and reduced eat school lunch. And so now it really just takes that stigma away. And that's one of the things that I think is most important about having meals at no cost for all students, just like we have textbooks and things like that. And I know that is a federal discussion that we have on the federal level year after year after year. And I've asked the question of, well, will it hurt if the states start volunteering to pay for this? Will it hurt us getting it at a federal level? And the questions and the comments that I get back is, remember, when the National School Lunch and Breakfast Program started, the grassroots had to start at state level before it got approved at the federal level.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wallace. Board members, are there any other questions or comments before I repeat the motion on the table and move for a vote? Okay. It has been moved and seconded to support passage of Proposition FF. Roll call, please. Ms. Lang.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Schooley?
Yes.
Dr. Varda?
Yes.
Great. Thank you all very much. I'm going to suggest we take just a quick break, and then we'll come back and conclude. Well, let me ask the question. We're going to never mind. I just got told I was not doing what I thought I was doing. This is why we have a collaborative. So now we're moving into leadership reports. So we'll begin with a report from the superintendent. It's an opportunity for the superintendent and for board members to provide updates and share the work that each of us has been doing. I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Schooley. Much of my time this month has been spent with school communities impacted by the Regional Opportunities for Thriving Schools recommendations of school consolidations. I have been able to visit with many staff members during the school day in school visits with principals and school leaders. I've been able to listen to parents and community members at evening community meetings. And there are some patterns and trends in the conversations and the feedback. First and foremost, I would just say that staff and families are grieving. And we heard some of that this evening directly from our families. This is incredibly difficult. Our communities are experiencing frustration, anger, worry, and sadness, and somewhat uncertainty, because there's this distance between the recommendation and the board's decision. In addition, we are hearing consistently about families caring deeply about their teachers and other staff members being taken care of through this process. I've had the opportunity to talk to several teachers who have expressed concerns about how staff have or have not been supported in the past, and how they are hopeful to be supported moving forward. Teachers are nervous about finding a new home and a new community of students to teach and care for. Families have concerns about safety related to busy intersections. There are questions about effective transportation, and there is a large interest in making sure our special education students are taken care of if the consolidations do occur. We've also heard a strong interest in making sure we do not balloon class sizes. While buildings might become larger, teachers and families are very interested in class sizes not becoming much larger. And we have shared that we are committed to current class size guidelines that we share with our JCEA and our collective bargaining agreement. The opportunity that I've had to listen to our staff and families is very valuable, especially as we continue to plan for the possibility of the consolidations based on your decision on November 10th. We are working on answers to the questions and concerns that are being posed with consideration of the feedback that's being shared with us and being present with our communities during this difficult time. It's important to me. It's important to our district staff, and I know that it's important to you all as well. And I very much appreciate the time that you all have taken out of your evenings to be present in the meetings. So thank you. In addition to that work, I have been able to attend several other important events. Thank you to Board Member Parker for joining me and other district leaders on Tuesday at the Great Ed Colorado Luncheon. At that luncheon, we had the opportunity to hear about districts across the state who are doing important work related to career-connected learning for students. Last night, I was able to spend time with Dr. Kim and Lisa Rilou at a Colorado Succeeds event, also focused on blurring the lines between high school, college, and career for students as we look toward the future of education for our secondary students. And then this morning, I had the honor of serving as a panelist at our kids' town hall, discussing social emotional learning and the mental health of youth in Jefferson County. I was honored to be there with Frank DeAngelis, who was one of the keynotes and did an amazing job just talking about recovery and social emotional supports for staff and students after difficult and traumatic events, relating some of his experience at Columbine to our recovery from the pandemic. So that was a very nice event with a partner who's interested in coming and joining us to think about how we support our students and our families with social emotional learning. And then I would also just share that tomorrow, I'm really excited because tomorrow morning we have our first in-person Jeffco Schools Foundation board meeting, and it's in person. I think those are the key words. We have not been in person with the foundation board in a very long time. So I'm really excited to be in person with that group of committed community members who care a lot about our district, and also be able to share with them about Jeffco Thrives so that we can start to align the foundation's work with our strategic plan. That's what I've been up to.
Thank you, Superintendent Dorland. Is there any board member that would like to provide a report? We have about 10 minutes for us to be able to share with one another our activities. Dr. Varda.
I don't have much to go through. I appreciate the summary. I think it reflects a lot of what we've been hearing and I've been trying to keep track of. I just want to express my gratitude for our community members who have been coming to these meetings, and also tonight who came to speak. It's the most that I've had a chance to be interactive with people in our community, and if nothing else, that's been a really great kind of outcome right now of what's going on, is the kind of openness that people are showing and expressing and talking to us and helping us think through these processes. So just a big thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Varda. Is there another board member that would like to share? Director Parker.
I am excited to say that I've heard from my high school principals that they can see a real difference this year. The enthusiasm and the activities, participation in sports and extracurricular things is really, picking up. And they were very excited about the start of this school year. Also, I've been going to the community conversations, and I, again, echo what Dr. Varda said, that I really appreciate the commitment, the passion, the interaction that we're seeing at these meetings. And because at the board level, we see presentations, we see slides, we see numbers, we see maps. We don't always see the people behind it. We don't see the kids. And so going into the schools and walking those halls and seeing the pictures on the walls and looking in the classrooms and hearing from the staff and the parents who often bring their kids too, so they're going to have some little activity going on while the adults are speaking, is very important. So I've appreciated that opportunity as well.
Thank you, Director Parker. Director Reed.
Well, like everyone else, I've really appreciated the opportunity to hear from our communities and to have these community meetings. I'm really grateful that we've had them. And I would say that summary fits very much what I've heard at the community meetings that I have attended, the same sorts of concerns. And so there's a couple of things for me that I think are really important. One is it is really both gratifying and in a way heartbreaking to see the love and support that people have for their neighborhood school, because I believe in neighborhood schools. I genuinely do. And to see people who share that passion and commitment is moving. And it's also really hard to be in a position where we're saying that this isn't something that is working 100% the way that we have it. And so I think one of the other things that I keep hearing as a main focus, and that I just want to say is not a main focus for me, is, well, we're going to save $8 to $12 million. And sure, okay, yeah, and that's great, and we need it because we just talked about the budget, but not nearly enough time talking about the fact that the smaller a school is, the fewer students it has, the less money it has, and that kids are missing out on opportunities. And we're talking about, don't take this away from kids. There's so much that they're not getting now if they're in a school that can't afford it. And I would really like to see us highlight that what we're going for here is not to overload classes, so that you don't have a class of 33 and you're kind of going, I don't know, can we justify another teacher with that? Or do we just leave the class at 33? Or, when we talk about individual focus on students, if we have a teacher who's teaching first and second grade at the same time and trying to juggle just the grade differences, not to mention IEPs, 504s, and kids that don't have plans in place but are individuals and have individual needs, that having just one grade level in a classroom makes a difference. It's important for the teachers to get the planning that they get with full-time art, music, and PE, but it's also really important for children to have full-time art, music, and PE. They're entitled to that. And to look at our schools and say we have all these schools that have high numbers of free and reduced lunch, high numbers of students of color, and say, but we're not going to worry about whether or not they have these opportunities. It doesn't sit right with me. So I want to highlight that as, for me, the most important part of this work. Also, I'm starting to have a chance to visit schools again, so it was really nice to go to Golden High School and hear from their principal that this year school feels like school, that they didn't spend the first, this whole first time just trying to get the kids to remember what school is like, that they kind of know, and they're just getting in, and it's feeling like a school year. It was also kind of sad to hear at Green Mountain Elementary that, the kids are doing all that, but there's been a lot of upheaval in their lives, and now there's upheaval again. And that is the tragic thing that just, it hurts. It really does. I do care. And he's a phenomenal principal. Tom is great. And it's not easy work, just for sure. I think it's the right work, but it is not easy. So I'm looking forward to getting back into even more schools as we go on.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Anyone on my left? Director Miller?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the summary, Superintendent Dorland. I do also appreciate that a number of people came here this evening, and it brings back memories of a number of years ago. I do think it's really important that the community is involved and that we do have that connection, as opposed to it's being done to us. We need to be able to have it together, hand in hand in some way, shape, or form. And so I think being able to explain, as you said, Paula, that what is it that we're building, and what is it going to look like for those children and for the experience, and being able to say, you will have not 90 children in your building. What are you getting for that? I think we also need to be sensitive about, the transitions going from one school to another, different curriculum, perhaps for the second or third time now, because we've closed one school, they've gone to a new school. And so once again, it's the resources. How are we going to address those needs that are identified when people are transferring? If you've had 3 different math programs in 3 years, that's daunting. And we've seen the outcomes of our math programs. If you've had 3 rounds of a different reading curriculum, how are you being supported with that reading program? And if you're going from a dual language to a non-dual language, I think there are ripples, and we've talked about this before, Director Schooley, about just what those resources are. We've been saying, we're going to have them, and we're in a financial deficit. We've got to really figure out how we're going to deliver that work. And that's what I'm hoping we will start talking about, frankly, because I think that's what people need to hear, is how are we going to be working with the community to serve those children and take care of them, so that the transitions, if they happen, are honorable to kids, and we take care of the children in their communities. So that's where I stand, and I really do appreciate everybody coming this evening, and the emails that we're receiving, and the opportunities that people are affording us to talk with them and meet with them. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Miller. Director Barta, is there anything you'd like to share? You did? You went first. I know. So I'll round us off. So the first very happy thing was able to go to the Jeffco marching band competition, which was, it was pouring down rain. But it was incredible. This is the first year I've had my own child that was competing in it as well. So it was just multiple layers of joy, and to see students out there being incredibly supportive of one another. And it's a competition, but it's also just such a collegial environment for those students to be in and doing something that they have the skills to do, and they've got a sense of rhythm that I don't have. And it was really just quite incredible. So thank you to our music educators and all of the leadership that was there to support those students. And then really, I appreciate the presence that all these board members and district leadership have shown at these community meetings, which have been hard, and trying to figure out a way to hold simultaneously the feeling like you want to throw up and be really nauseous and sort of sick with grief, and at the same time, an aspirational view that we have been talking about around a concept of thriving schools, and it feels like it's in conflict, and we just have to sit with it, that it's difficult, and we need to be able to share, recognize one and share the other in a way that's really clear to individuals. So I appreciate the engagement from everyone. With that, is there anything else that folks would like to share before I adjourn our meeting? Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's meeting. Our next meeting is a study session scheduled for October 12th at 3 o'clock here at the Ed Center, and we are adjourned. Thank you all for your time.